"You have 1 week, and one rule," Julian Blackwood announced. His voice as cold and sterile as the polished marble floor of his penthouse. 4 identical, impossibly sleek black envelopes were placed on the glass table before 4 very different women. "By something that shows me who you are," the words hung in the air, a challenge laced with the chilling indifference only generational wealth could cultivate. Inside each envelope was a Blackwood Unlimited card, a sliver of metal and plastic with no set limit, a key to unlock any desire the world had to offer. For Julian, it was not a key, but a scalpel, meant to dissect the souls of these women his board insisted he must consider for a wife. He was the CEO of Blackwood Industries, a titan of global commerce, but in his heart, he was merely the ghost haunting the empire his parents had built before a tragic accident stole them from him, leaving him with everything and nothing. Across the city, in a small, third-floor apartment that smelled of lemon polish and lavender, Elena Vance was carefully ironing her uniform. It was a simple gray dress, impeccably clean, a stark contrast to the couture gowns that would soon be purchased with Julian Blackwood's money. She was a maid in his penthouse, a phantom who polished his silver and straightened his books, but remained utterly invisible to him. Her world was not one of desire, but of need. Every dollar she earned, every ounce of her strength, was dedicated to her younger sister, Lily, whose laughter had been stolen by a silent, creeping illness that doctors spoke of in hushed, expensive tones. Elena worked under the shadow of Veronica Sterling, the imperious daughter of a rival CEO and the frontrunner in this bizarre matrimonial contest. Veronica treated the staff as less than human, her cruelty a casual sport. Today, Elena's only thought was surviving another shift under Veronica's watchful, malevolent gaze, unaware that a simple mistake, a misplaced envelope, was about to ignite a fire that would either consume her world or save it entirely. In that penthouse, a game of souls was about to begin, and the player no one saw coming held the only hand that mattered. The collision of their worlds happened not with a bang, but with a whisper of falling paper. Veronica Sterling, preening before a hall mirror, had been juggling her phone, her designer handbag, and the precious black envelope. "Useless girl," she snapped, not even looking at Elena, who was dusting a nearby console table. "Don't just stand there. Pick it up." As Elena knelt, her fingers brushing against the cool, expensive cardstock, Veronica's phone rang. It was a call she deemed more important. With a dismissive wave, she strode away, leaving the envelope on the console table. "Put that in my suite. And don't you dare smudge it later." Alfred, the head butler and the only person in the penthouse who saw the staff as people, approached Elena. "Miss Vance," he said, his kind eyes clouded with worry. He held another, identical black envelope. This was left for a Miss Du Bois, but her flight was cancelled. "Mr. Blackwood is insistent that all 4 cards be distributed. He said to give it to, well," he gestured to the staff quarters. Alfred, in a moment of quiet rebellion against his employer's cold cynicism, had chosen Elena. He saw the fatigue in her eyes, the goodness in her heart. "Perhaps it is a bonus," he offered, though he knew it was something far stranger. Elena, confused and flustered, tried to refuse, but Alfred insisted. "Just take it. Please." She now held a key to a world she could not comprehend, a dangerous temptation she never asked for. Julian watched the exchange on a security monitor in his private study. He had seen Veronica's carelessness, her disdain. He had seen Alfred's quiet intervention. A flicker of something, was it amusement or irritation, crossed his face. This was an unexpected variable in his carefully controlled experiment. A maid. What could a maid possibly do with unlimited funds? The thought was almost laughable. He expected her to buy a new television, perhaps pay her rent for a year, a small, predictable purchase before returning the card, terrified. He decided to let the experiment play out. It would be a perfect control group, a baseline of predictable, lower-class desperation against which he could measure the avarice of the elite. He zoomed the camera in on Elena's face as she stared at the card in her hand, her expression not one of greed, but of profound, heart-wrenching conflict. For the first time in years, Julian Blackwood felt a sliver of genuine curiosity. He instructed his security team to track every purchase made on all 4 cards, but to pay special attention to the one held by the maid. He needed to know what a person with nothing would do when handed everything. The game had just become infinitely more interesting. His investigation began as a cold, detached observation. The first alerts came within hours. Tiffany Caldwell, a social media influencer, had purchased a limited edition sports car, immediately posting a picture of it with the hashtag #BlackwoodBabe. Brittany Astor, an heiress from old money, had acquired a rare collection of vintage wines, a purchase of quiet, staggering expense. Veronica Sterling, in a move of pure audacity, had put a down payment on a yacht, naming it the Julian II. The purchases were exactly what he expected. Loud, ostentatious, and entirely self-serving. They were billboards advertising their own ambition. But from Elena Vance's card, there was only silence. Days passed. No transactions. No alerts. Nothing. The silence was more intriguing than any purchase. What was she doing? Was she too scared to use it? Had she lost it? The puzzle of the maid began to occupy his thoughts, a quiet hum beneath the roar of his business dealings. He found himself watching her on the security feeds as she worked. He saw her meticulous care, the way she straightened a photograph of his parents that others ignored. He saw Veronica bump into her, causing a tray of glasses to shatter, and then blame Elena for the mess, her voice a whip of pure venom. "You are so clumsy. You'll be paying for that out of your pathetic salary for the rest of your life." Elena didn't argue. She simply knelt and began picking up the broken glass, her hands shaking slightly. Julian felt an unfamiliar pang in his chest. It was the dull ache of injustice. He decided a more direct approach was needed. Dismissing his driver, he took the wheel of one of his less conspicuous luxury sedans and waited, parked down the street from the service entrance of his own building. When Elena emerged after her shift, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion, he followed her. Her journey did not lead to a shopping mall or a luxury boutique. It led her across town to a modest, walk-up apartment building in a neighborhood his car's navigation system barely recognized. He watched as she climbed the stairs, her pace quickening with an eagerness he had never seen in her. He waited. An hour later, he saw her through the window, sitting on the floor with a little girl. They were drawing, their heads bent together under the warm, golden light of a simple lamp. The scene was so filled with love, with a gentle peace that his penthouse had never known, that it felt like a physical blow. Who was this child? Why had he never known? He had her entire employment file, a dry document of facts and figures, but it contained none of this. Contained none of the truth. This was the first crack in the icy wall around his heart, the first suggestion that the world was not the simple, transactional equation he had believed it to be. He had set out to test her soul, and was instead being forced to confront the emptiness of his own. The next day, he arranged to be in the library when she was scheduled to clean it. He hid the immense wealth of his suit behind a simple sweater, pretending to be a visiting consultant. "That's a nasty cut," he said, gesturing to the bandage on her hand. She jumped, startled. She had never been spoken to directly by anyone who wasn't staff. "Oh, it's nothing. Just some broken glass. I saw what happened," he said, his voice softer than he intended. "With Miss Sterling. It wasn't your fault." Elena's eyes widened, a flicker of fear in them. "Please, sir, don't. I can't afford to lose this job." The desperation in her voice was raw. He saw then that her integrity was a liability in her world, a luxury she couldn't afford. "Your secret is safe," he assured her. "I'm just curious. Why do you put up with it?" She looked away, her gaze falling on a small, framed photo on a side table. It was the one of her and the little girl he had seen through the window. "That's my sister, Lily," she whispered, her voice thick with an emotion that transcended words. She's not well. The doctors, they use a lot of big words, but they all mean the same thing. They don't know what to do. The treatments, the specialists. It all costs so much." She finally looked at him, and for the first time he saw the full weight of the burden she carried. It was a crushing, relentless pressure. "I put up with it for her," she said simply. "I would do anything for her." He asked more questions, feigning a polite, professional interest. She told him about Lily's rare neurological condition, how it was slowly stealing her ability to communicate, trapping her in a silent world. She spoke of a new experimental treatment, a beacon of hope that was financially impossible, a distant star in a galaxy of debt. "It costs more than I could make in 10 lifetimes, she said, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "So I clean. And I pray for a miracle." In that moment, Julian understood the silence of the black card. To her, it wasn't a toy. It wasn't a key to luxury. It was a terrifying, sacred object. It was a miracle she was too afraid to touch, a moral crossroads that tormented her. He saw her profound goodness, her fierce, protective love. It was a force of nature more powerful than his entire fortune. He looked at this woman, this maid in a simple gray uniform, and felt an overwhelming sense of shame for his cynical game. He had intended to expose the greed in others, but had only succeeded in exposing the poverty of his own spirit. As he left the library, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He could not let Veronica Sterling or anyone else harm this woman. Her fight was now his fight. The midpoint of the week arrived, and with it, a new level of cruelty from Veronica. She had noticed Julian's subtle shift in attention. She didn't know why he was suddenly observing the staff, but she sensed a threat, and her instincts targeted Elena. Veronica's purchase of the yacht was an empty gesture. She needed to secure her position not just with wealth, but by eliminating any perceived competition, however lowly. She decided to set a trap. She knew Julian's late mother's locket, a simple silver oval he kept on his nightstand, was his most treasured possession. One morning, after Elena had cleaned his private suite, Veronica burst into the main hall, her voice a theatrical shriek of alarm. "It's gone! The locket! It's gone!" She pointed a trembling, perfectly manicured finger at Elena, who was polishing a nearby table. She was the only one in his suite. The little thief. Alfred rushed to the scene, his face pale. Julian watched from his study, his heart turning to ice. He knew Elena was innocent. He had been watching the feed the entire time. He saw Veronica enter the room moments after Elena had left, pocket the locket herself, and then emerge to play the part of the victim. It was a classic, cruel setup, designed to utterly destroy Elena's reputation and livelihood. The accusation was a poisoned dart aimed at the heart of Elena's most valuable asset, her integrity. For a woman with nothing else, her good name was everything. Julian's first instinct was to storm out and expose Veronica immediately, but he stopped himself. A public denial would be his word against hers. Her family was powerful, influential. They would spin it, twist it, paint him as a fool being manipulated by a cunning servant. No, a simple denial was not enough. Veronica deserved more than that. She deserved a reckoning. He needed to let her think she had one. He needed to give her enough rope to hang herself, and he would orchestrate the stage on which she would do it. He made the call he had been dreading. He told Alfred to follow protocol. "Call security," Julian said, his voice a low growl, and let her go. Hearing those words, even knowing his plan, felt like a betrayal. From his monitor, he watched the scene unfold. He saw the confusion and terror in Elena's eyes as security guards flanked her. He saw the triumphant, venomous smirk on Veronica's face. He saw Alfred's look of profound disappointment, aimed squarely at the hidden camera he knew Julian was watching from. Elena didn't cry or protest. She simply stood, her dignity a silent shield, as she was escorted from the building, fired, disgraced, and facing the threat of legal charges. The all-is-lost moment had arrived, and for Elena, it was devastatingly real. For Julian, it was the final catalyst. He was no longer just an observer. He was now an instrument of justice, and he would bring the full weight of his empire down upon Veronica Sterling. His choice was made. The game was over. The war had just begun. The setback was a calculated risk, a painful but necessary move in a much larger strategy. While Elena was at home, her world shattered, convinced she would now face legal action, Julian was mobilizing his own forces. He had the security footage of Veronica taking the locket, time-stamped and verified. It was his ace in the hole. But he didn't stop there. He unleashed his corporate intelligence division, not on a rival company, but on a single person, Veronica Sterling. He wanted to know everything. He wanted to understand the rot at her core. The reports that came back were worse than he could have imagined. A history of lawsuits settled out of court, complaints from former assistants, drivers, and household staff, all alleging verbal abuse, wage theft, and malicious lies. He found evidence of her sabotaging business deals for her own father, leaking information to competitors for personal gain. She was not just cruel. She was a creature of chaos and self-interest, leaving a trail of destruction wherever she went. The locket was not an isolated act. It was her nature. All this evidence was compiled into a sleek, undeniable dossier. The stage for the final act was set. The annual Blackwood Foundation Charity Gala, an event attended by the city's most powerful and influential figures. It was the night the four women were to present what they had bought, the night Julian was expected to announce his choice. And it was the night Veronica Sterling's world would come to an end. The night of the gala arrived. The ballroom was a galaxy of glittering chandeliers and shimmering gowns. Julian stood on the stage, a mask of calm composure hiding the storm within. The first two women presented their purchases. Tiffany, the influencer, played a slick video of her new sports car, framing it as a symbol of driving towards a brighter future. Brittany, the heiress, spoke eloquently about the investment potential of her wine collection. A nod to preserving heritage. The applause was polite, predictable. Then it was Veronica's turn. She glided to the stage, radiating smug confidence. She didn't have a physical object to show. Instead, she launched into a speech, her voice dripping with false sincerity. Julian asked us to buy something that shows who we are, she began, her eyes scanning the powerful audience. But I believe true character isn't shown by what you buy, but by what you protect. She paused for dramatic effect. This week, I protected the Blackwood legacy from a threat within. A common thief who tried to steal a precious family heirloom. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I exposed her, and for that, I believe I have proven my loyalty, my integrity, and my worthiness to stand by the Blackwood name. She smiled. A victor's smile, believing she had sealed her triumph. She had turned her cruelty into a virtue, her crime into a noble act. An impressive performance, Veronica, Julian said, his voice cutting through the applause. He walked to the center of the stage, a tablet in his hand. A truly compelling story, but it has one fatal flaw. He looked directly at her, his eyes burning with cold fire. It's a lie. The smile on Veronica's face froze. Every word of it. Julian tapped the tablet, and the massive screen behind the stage, which had been displaying the foundation's logo, flickered to life. It showed the security footage from his suite. The room watched in stunned silence as the video played. Elena cleaning meticulously, leaving the room, and then, moments later, Veronica entering, looking around furtively, snatching the locket from the nightstand, and slipping it into her purse. A collective gasp, sharp and loud, echoed through the ballroom. The screen then split, showing a live feed of a police officer retrieving the very same locket from the side pocket of Veronica's handbag, which she had left at her table. Her face turned from pale to ashen. The trap had been sprung. You didn't protect my mother's locket? Julian boomed, his voice resonating with righteous fury. You stole it. You framed an innocent woman to make yourself look good. A woman whose integrity, whose fundamental human decency, is worth more than your entire family's fortune. He wasn't finished. He projected documents from his dossier. The settled lawsuits, the evidence of corporate espionage. The ruin was absolute, public, and undeniable. Her father, sitting in the front row, looked as if he had been turned to stone. But Julian's true climax, the real purpose of the evening, was yet to come. Veronica and the others showed you what they would buy for themselves. he announced to the silent, captivated audience. Now, let me show you what real character looks like. The doors at the back of the ballroom opened. Alfred entered, and with him was Elena. She was not in her uniform, but in a simple, elegant blue dress Julian had sent her. She looked terrified, but as her eyes met Julian's, she found a strength she didn't know she possessed. She walked towards the stage as if in a dream. Elena Vance was also given a Blackwood card, Julian explained. For days she didn't use it. She was too honorable, too frightened of what it represented. But finally, faced with an impossible choice, she made a single purchase. He gestured to the screen again. The security footage and legal documents were replaced by a single, quiet image. A bank transfer confirmation. It was an astronomical sum, paid to a specialized pediatric medical research facility in another country. This is a down payment, Julian's voice cracked with emotion, for the full course of an experimental gene therapy, a treatment that represents the only hope for a little girl named Lily, who is fighting a rare disease. He turned to Elena, his eyes shining with an admiration and affection that was plain for all to see. She didn't buy a car or a yacht or wine. She bought a chance at life for her sister. She bought a miracle. He took her hand, pulling her to his side at the center of the stage. That, he declared to the world, is who Elena Vance is. The takedown was complete. Veronica was escorted out by security, her future a wasteland of social ruin and legal battles. The power dynamic had not just been reversed, it had been shattered and remade. Julian, in front of everyone, had rejected the shallow values of his class and embraced the profound worth of a woman they had all overlooked. He had not chosen a wife from the candidates. He had found a partner in the one person who wasn't playing the game. Their victory was not just personal. It was a moral statement, a grand, public validation of goodness over greed. The applause that erupted was not polite. It was a thunderous, cathartic roar. In the aftermath of the gala, the world shifted on its axis for them both. The Sterling family's empire crumbled under the weight of the public scandal and the corporate sabotage Julian had exposed. Veronica disappeared from the public eye, a pariah in the world she had so desperately sought to conquer. But for Julian and Elena, this was not an ending, but a beginning. The first thing Julian did was ensure the full cost of Lily's treatment was covered, not as a loan, but as a gift. He flew with Elena and Lily to the clinic, holding Elena's hand through every tense waiting period, celebrating with her when the doctors delivered the news that the therapy was a success. Watching the light and laughter slowly return to Lily's eyes was a balm to his own wounded soul. He had spent years surrounded by opulence, but he had never witnessed anything as beautiful or as valuable as a child's recovering smile. He saw his wealth not as a shield or a weapon anymore, but as a tool for creating genuine good in the world, a lesson Elena had taught him without ever trying. He apologized to her for his cynical test, for putting her through the ordeal, for ever being the kind of man who would think such a game was a good idea. She forgave him, for she saw the man he was becoming, not the man he had been. 1 year later, the grand ballroom that had been the site of Veronica's downfall was filled once again, but this time for a different reason. Julian and Elena stood on the same stage, not as judge and subject, but as partners, launching the Lily's Light Foundation, a massive philanthropic endeavor dedicated to funding medical treatments for children from low-income families. Julian had redirected a significant portion of his company's profits into the foundation, transforming the cold engine of commerce into a beacon of hope. Elena, no longer a maid but the co-chair of the foundation, spoke to the crowd with a quiet confidence that captivated everyone. She spoke of dignity, of compassion, of the simple truth that a person's worth is not measured by their bank account, but by the love they give. Lily, now healthy and vibrant, sat in the front row, drawing in a sketchbook. Alfred stood near the back, his eyes twinkling with pride. Julian looked at Elena, his partner in life and in purpose, and knew he had finally found what he had been searching for. He had started with a test of character, hoping to find a woman worthy of his name, and had instead found a woman who taught him how to be worthy of his own. The greatest fortune he possessed was not the number in his bank account, but the love of a good woman who had shown him how to have a heart. Was there ever a greater treasure? What do you think is the true measure of a person's wealth?